Hi, this is Cheryl back with you from Farmhouse Frugally, and today I have some beautiful primitive fall items that I'm going to be making over. These are trash to treasure. I got this kind of cute primitive flag tray at the dump, cleaned it up good, and then I wanted to do something for autumn, but I wanted to stay away from the oranges and the typical fall colors for primitive. And the colors in primitive tend to be that gold mustard color and a lot of burgundy and a lot of black. So I decided that I would start by painting this with a latex paint. I had a sample from, I believe, Home Depot of just a black paint, and it does have a bit of a shine to it. Normally I prefer a chalk paint with a flat finish, but when it comes to a tray, it's not a bad idea to have a pretty decent finish on it in case water spills or what have you. So once I was finished painting it and that dried, I took my sander around the edges and I just sanded that so that it would be distressed and covered it with a dark wax. And so you'll see that in a minute. And then the second thing I'm doing is I had this beautiful spindle. I had this really, really old magazine rack falling apart, and this was either the feet or the spindle that was on it. And I just thought that is going to make an amazing pumpkin stem. So all I did was clean it up and hit it with the sander a little bit here and there. And then I'm putting a good coat of wax on it because it may be lead paint. It's that old. So I wanted to make sure that it's well covered. And then once I finished with that, I went into my stash to see what I have for primitive fabrics. Most of my fabrics are primitive because I used to have a primitive country shop. And so I like this check piece. And I decided that I would just start with a square and cut that, and then once I had that, I would just fill that with some lentils to hold, because we don't really eat lentils in our house. We just keep them in this pretty glass jar. Nobody really loves them, but they're good to weight the bottom. And then once I had that down the bottom, then I added the fiber fill. And then, I mean, it's not difficult to make a pumpkin. Obviously, it's very easy. And once you get this done, there's a number of different ways you can do it. I have done it with rope, and I've done the rope around and around and around, making the sections. But if you fold it, you can actually make those sections without doing the rope. But what I like to do is just grab up one piece and hot glue it, and then do the opposite piece. And it takes a little longer this way because you do have to let it dry in your hands. You know, you don't want to just let it go or it'll pop off. And then I move to the next section and the next section. And then after I've gotten them, you know, just generally tacked down, take a string. In this case, I used a jute twine and go around the top and secure all of that. And then once you're done doing that and you have, you know, the general pumpkin shape, then I like to just, you know, trim off whatever needs to be trimmed off, and then take the you know, the base of the pumpkin and just keep fluffing it until you get that section look, that pumpkin sections. And that's all I did to this to keep it real simple and real primitive. I don't have a leaf in my stash handy. If I find one, I could certainly add that. Or, you know, a nice hang tag would be a lot of fun too. I might add something a little later. Next one, I have this pretty squash pumpkin color, and I mixed it with what I thought was brown paint, turned out being my brown wax. So I wasn't sure if this antiquing wax mix was going to take 25 days to cure or what, but actually it was just really, it was a little tacky for the day, and then the next day it was good. Luckily. But if you do this, definitely you want to mix orange and brown paint, not wax. And then I took these little tins. I have had a beautiful wreath that's starting to really fall apart that I had made with a bunch of these little patty pans, tart pans, and I decided I just really wanted to do something different. I had seen some stuff on Pinterest where people were using these as different kinds of pumpkins, and I thought I'll make my own twist on that. So once those are dry, then I went into my stash, and you can use a cinnamon stick here if you can get it to stay still. You can use a stick from your yard. Any number of things make a great pumpkin stem. I am using a wine cork because someone left a bag of hundreds of them at my good table at the dump, so I have a bunch. And then I just took a scrap of fabric I had laying around from the shabby project that I just did, and I tried that on with a little bit of that check fabric. And then a little later on I add a few other things. I add this star, then I take it off and I get a smaller star. So here is what that ends up looking like, and those are so sweet. If you have any of those little tarp pans, those are great. Now I am making another scarecrow. Hopefully you have seen my first one. We took some spindles and a square block from the dollar store and just tacked those together with some nails, and then I am just using that same black paint, and I am going to paint this entire thing black as my base. I will try to remember to link my video from the first scarecrow, and this way you'll have two to choose from if you want to make something like this. If you have a booth or you go to craft fairs for the fall, I think that this would be a very inexpensive item that would sell, and you can make them all kinds of ways. This is just to give you an idea, but if you get creative, you could use all kinds of things. You could make them smaller, you can make them 3 different sizes, you can do all kinds of really cool things. So once that is painted black and that is dry, I have this wonderful roll of burlap that I believe I got at TJ Maxx probably 5, 6, 7 years ago. And what I am doing is I just fold over the top, and so drop cloth would work well here. Burlap is phenomenal for scarecrows, but any fabric that you have that you think is fall looking would certainly work. You do not have to do this part here. In fact, if I make a third one, I probably won't cut out the sides of it. I might keep it just very straight. But in this particular case, I did cut out the sides using the glue gun because burlap frays. If you're using a different kind of fabric, you may not need to worry about gluing this as much as I have to make sure that once I cut it, it's not going to fray. I do want a little bit of fray on the bottom, so I did that intentionally. And then I took out this piece of primitive fabric that I have and just tore that to size and decided that I wanted something to cover over the burlap. So the burlap's peeking out, but it looks like almost like he or she is wearing an apron or a second, shirt. I glued that on top, and after that I cut it up the center, and then made it look like it had a gap so that I could add some buttons and some pockets and some different little trim. You can certainly get creative and do anything that looks like a scarecrow to you. Now, once I have some of the trim, I just did some little pockets and such. I wanted to cut a neck hole and then to make a head. I am using a Christmas ornament, which is a paper mache ornament. You can get those, I believe, on Amazon. I think I saw them last Christmas. And then I am going to paint a little face on that and then attach that to the top, and then I am going to sew some buttons, and I'm going to put some things in the pocket, and then I am going to give him a little bit of hair made out of raffia. And then once I'm finished with that, I decide that he needs a hat. So I am going to use the patty pan that I painted earlier with the pumpkin. You'll see that I had painted 3 of them, the little tins, and I'm going to use that one as his hat. And that is pretty much all there is to it. And here he is, next to the one that I made a couple of weeks ago. Let me know what you think of them. And then my final for today is this wood bowl that I got at the dump. It was split and someone had glued it, so I washed it real good, but I thought it would be fun to just look for something to make it look like an acorn. So I went through my house and I pulled out plates and little tops to canisters and bowls with little knobs, and just thought it would be cute to give you some ideas of, if you have a wooden bowl, how you could create an acorn from it. And then I had that canister set, which gave me the perfect acorn looking top. And then here is my vignette with my lovely Scarecrow and the black tray, that wonderful pumpkin with that stem that I so love, the little patty pan or tart pumpkin, and the acorn with a few other items that I had hanging around. So I would love to know what you think about this primitive fall vignette, and if you prefer cottagecore, primitive country, farmhouse, or something else. So I would love to know for future videos. Thank you so much for stopping by. Please make sure that you hit subscribe if you haven't. And I have several more videos coming up, so stay tuned. Take care, and I will see you in the next one.